What more do we know about this Nvidia announcement and what it tells us about the Trump administration's thinking on export controls?
Well, I think it's interesting that it was Nvidia who announced this, not the White House. I'll get to that and what that means in a little bit. But essentially, this is a great victory for CEO of Nvidia, Jen-Hsun Huang, who, by the way, is in Beijing right now, just appeared on state television. And we learned of this development on the H20 chip through a blog post from Nvidia, essentially saying that they've been given tacit approval by the White House to apply for those export licenses for the H20 chips to be sold to China. And he expects, Jen-Hsun Huang and Nvidia all expect that those license applications to be approved and the H20 chips can resume being sold to China. Jen-Hsun Huang has been an outspoken critic of these export controls from the United States, saying they haven't worked, and also they've given competitors in China like Huawei an unfair advantage. In fact, Nvidia projected they could lose about $8 billion in sales in this current quarter just because of those export controls. They'd also been working on a new chip based on Blackwell architecture to comply with those Trump trade curbs. But now, if the H20 is going to resume sales to China, it would be an interesting development, obviously, and a very fortuitous one for Nvidia to have two potential chips. Yes, they're scaled back from the most advanced AI chips from Nvidia, but still, having chips that are compliant with U.S. export controls allowed to go into China is a big development, not only for Nvidia, but for U.S.-China relations, no doubt.
Well, on that point, Stephen, what is your assessment of what this tells us about those conversations, the trade tensions that we know exist between the two sides, that on some level have eased to some extent? What does this reflect when it comes to those trade negotiations?
Well, it tells us a lot about what Jen-Hsun Huang and Donald Trump spoke about in the White House last week, and also why Jen-Hsun Huang is in Beijing right now with meetings with the Commerce Minister as well as their trade negotiator, He Lifeng. So obviously he's the one that has lobbied the White House, gaining that approval for the export licenses, and he's the one to take that message essentially to China. What it tells me about the backroom bargaining in the trade deal and the trade truce that was reaffirmed in London is that the United States clearly wants China to speed up its export licensing process for rare earth minerals as well as rare earth magnets. And what does China want? They want a relaxation of those tight export controls on advanced chips. It seems as though this was win-win for the two countries as they try and bridge their differences. And this was maybe for Donald Trump, as he met with Jen-Hsun Huang, a little bit of a low-hanging fruit and was convinced that they're doing the United States tech companies' competitive advantage more harm than good.